How are we? Are we on?
Yeah.
Are we good? Okay. Well, fantastic. Welcome everybody to the virtual Vinstitute. This is probably the 9th one, virtual Vinstitute number 9. Welcome everyone. Once again, we've changed location. I am your host, Moss Sherkogel. That is the one constant. Also this sign that I drag around with me everywhere, and that one too, which I'm just going to stand in front of. But today, hopefully we are going to have the finest quality of audio and video that we have ever experienced in one of these live streams, because I actually have a professional videographer helping me with this. This is also the first time that I'm going to have a producer. So say hi, producer Andrew.
Once again, hello.
Hi there. So as well, actually, producer Andrew, I didn't ask him to do this yet, but if there's any comments that come in, if anybody has any questions, you want to just relay those to me?
You got it, Moss.
That'll be fantastic, because I'm just staring at a bunch of glaring lights and a little camera, so I've got absolutely no feedback. Usually I'm staring at a screen of myself, which is really distracting, which is probably one of the reasons for the low quality of the previous streams. So let's look forward to a brand new bar and a higher ceiling. Welcome everybody once again to the Virtual Vinstitute number 9, where today we are going to be looking at 3 wines, all from one consistent grape variety. We are going to be talking about a grape that I think is extremely important, that I think most people within the wine industry would consider extremely important, but it is a grape that is maybe a little bit underutilized in certain ways, a little underappreciated. And it is actually one of the most fundamental and formative grapes in pretty much the biology of wine as we know it. What all that babble means is that this is a grape from which many grapes are descended. And do you like how I'm not saying the name of the grape as if it's a surprise, despite the fact that it says right in the title of this video what it is? I'm just going to keep that up, because I want to draw your attention over here to my trusty whiteboard, the only other constant in this video series that I drag around with me everywhere, where I have named a bunch of grapes, some of which maybe you have heard of before. Things like Sauv Blanc, things like Merlot or Cab Sauv, and some of them you've probably never heard of before, like Gros Cabernet, not sure what that means, or Magdalen Noir de Chartres, which honestly you're never going to need to hear again or say again in your life, because this is pretty much its only role in terms of our wine culture, which is it was crossed with a mystery grape, a certain grape, to create Merlot. And what is the grape that fits into this role in the genealogy? It is, of course, the name of this episode, the topic that we're talking about, the 3 wines that I'm going to taste. It's Cabernet Franc. Hey, there's the surprise. I'm just going to go Cab Franc. Cab Franc is a really important grape, not just because of its role in straight-up winemaking, but because of its historic genealogical role in the biology and development of all these other grapes that we know and love. Did you realize that in order to get Cab Sauv, Cabernet Sauvignon, which many people think of as kind of the king of red wines, that it's the apex of red wines, did you know that in order to get Cab Sauv, you actually get it by crossing together the grapes Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc? So you actually take a lighter red wine grape, Cab Franc, and a white wine grape, and by crossing them together you get something that is heavier and more tannic and richer and denser in all ways than either of its 2 parents, which is, it just shows you how completely bizarre and almost irrational grape biology is. But then you take Cab Franc, you cross it with Magdalen Noir de Chartres. I'm sorry, I told you that you wouldn't need to hear that again. And what you get from that is Merlot. And so Merlot is pretty much a half brother to Cab Sauv, and both of them share the same parent, Cab Franc. If you take Merlot if you take the one I'm going to say for the third time, Magdalen Noir de Chartres, and you cross that with a different one called Prunelard, which is a terrible name, you get Malbec. So Malbec is another sort of descendant there. Cab Franc crossed with Gros Cabernet equals Carmenere. All of these grapes that we know, Cab Sauv, Merlot, Malbec, Carmenere, all of these things, they kind of come and descend out of Cab Franc. Grapes are incredibly mutable. Grapes have this wild, frenetic biology. They are incredibly prone to mutation. They will change at the drop of a hat. You get random spontaneous mutation just within a single vineyard. You'll plant a few thousand vines that are all consistent when you put them in the ground. 10 years later, some of them have changed. Some of them have actually developed into entirely different plants. And because they're hermaphroditic, they can both pollinate and receive pollination from a single plant. It means that you get all kinds of wild, crazy interactions that mean that these grapes appear. Almost none of these were created by human beings either. This was all natural. The creation of Cab Sauv was an accident that just happened to come across from fields of Cab Franc being next to fields of Sauv Blanc and creating this new plant. So Cab Franc, we owe it a lot because most red wine drinkers, if you ask them what their favorite grape is, a lot of people will say things like Cab Sauv, or Malbec, Carmenere, rightly so. Delicious wines. But personally, for my money, I am a huge fan of Cab Franc on its own. Not just as a predecessor to all these other grapes, but in its own right. Cab Franc is lighter than Cab Sauv. It is a little more aromatic than something like Merlot. It has softer tannin than a wine like Carmenere or Malbec. It is generally a little bit more gentle and a little bit more elegant. But as well, Cab Franc is used as almost an insurance policy in areas where you want to do Cab Sauv, but you can't necessarily rely on the development of Cab Sauv on a consistent basis. You see, Cab Franc tends to bloom and begin its growth a little later than Cab Sauv, sometimes as little as a week, sometimes more than that, which means that if you're in an area with a narrow season, you've got cold periods stretching into the early spring, Cab Sauv can be at risk because it tries to flower early, and then if you have snap frost, if you have cold late in the spring, you can damage that vine or you can stunt its growth or hinder it. But Cab Franc stays sheltered a little bit longer, then it starts to grow, and it ripens usually a little bit faster. So it has a shorter season, which means that you can grow Cab Franc and ripen it in an area of the world, in a cooler climate, where you wouldn't necessarily be able to get consistent Cab Sauv, which is one of the reasons why Cab Franc is very well suited to British Columbia, right? Think about it. The Okanagan Valley, the Similkameen Valley, you've got good amounts of heat. You've got generally longish seasons where we are permitted to grow some of these more arduous grapes that take a little bit more effort. But outside of these select zones, you wind up getting generally shorter seasons, cooler seasons, and yet Cab Franc is something that's viable in a lot of British Columbia. And so it's something that you will see from Lillooet. It's something that you'll see from the Fraser Valley. You'll see it from out here on Vancouver Island. I'm in Victoria right now. There's Cab Franc being grown on the island. Mind you, it always tastes different. It's a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit lighter, but Cab Franc is a grape that can handle it. So there's your basic fundament, your background on Cab Franc and why I think it's so important to discuss it here. By the way, it's also called Carmenere, but nobody cares, so let's just call it Cab Franc. I have 3 wines here today that I'm going to be talking about. All of them from, of course, Oliver and Osoyoos, and all 3 of them showing off slightly different terroir, different aspects of the area. You see the Oliver Osoyoos growing region, you've got about 30 kilometers stretching from the border up to McIntyre Bluff, which is kind of the jurisdiction, the range that we call our own. And what I have right here is a group of grapes that are grown directly down in Osoyoos, almost right on the border. Then we have some grown a little further up on the Black Sage Bench, where you have sort of prime heat, lots of sand. And then we have some grown a little bit further north, right into Oliver, sort of northeast of Oliver, where you have more gravel and well, river stones. That shouldn't be a spoiler for the winery itself. And we're going to look at them one at a time. Kind of ascending in terms of year. I've talked about this before on these tastings, but when you're doing a vertical tasting is when you look at one grape, generally speaking from one winery, and you go through multiple seasons. Now, this is not a true vertical because we're going different wineries, but they are all from different years, so we're getting kind of a loosey-goosey vertical. You always start with the oldest grape. And that's because it tends to be that the oldest grape is going to be the most muted. It's going to be the softest because age is going to calm it down, whereas the youngest wine is going to be usually the most vibrant, the most intense, and so that's the one you want to finish off on so that you don't burn out your taste buds. But we are doing something kind of interesting here too, because we are going to start with the Blue Sky Cabernet Franc from 2015. And even though this is the eldest wine, it is not necessarily going to be the softest and the calmest because it's from 2015. And 2015 was notably the hottest season that we've had on record in terms of our growing conditions, in terms of the sheer amount of heat units that was poured into the entirety of British Columbia, but in particular, places like Osoyoos. Osoyoos is already basically the hottest spot to grow grapes in British Columbia or in Canada. And in 2015, it was something else entirely. So we're starting with a wine that already has a lot of density. And a lot of 2015 wines are tasting fantastic right now because they started out with such incredible intensity, concentration, vigor, that they needed a little bit of time to smooth out. Sometimes you get your lighter years and the wines are easier to drink a little bit early on because they're a little bit fresher, they're a little bit crisper, and they require less oxygen basically in time to calm down the tannin. For 2015, this is actually a really good time to be coming at it. So we've got Blue Sky 2015 Cabernet Franc. Now, if you haven't heard of Blue Sky before, they are relatively new. I think they've been up for maybe about 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. I have it written on my notes, but my eyes are fixed on this camera, so I kind of just don't want to look down there. Eventually, I will look down there. Yes, okay. Open 2016, so there you go, 4 years old. I was right. You'll have to forgive me if I look down there. Usually I tape my notes to the side of the camera, but you shouldn't even know that. You should think that I'm doing this all off the top of my head. Blue Sky is right down inside of Osoyoos itself. They're on the west side of the lake, and they're snuggled right down in kind of the north corner of the town of Osoyoos, very close to the water. And Blue Sky, like I said, they opened up their winery back in 2016. Their first vintage was back in 2011, and they've been growing grapes on that site since I think 2008, sorry. And so the owners of Blue Sky, it's the Tour family. It's Harpreet and Navpreet. Harpreet is the vineyard manager, and Navpreet is the winemaker, working with a winemaking consultant. And it's again a family-oriented winery, a family-operated winery. The Tour family came over from India about close to 20 years ago. And more than 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I think. And they've been farming, they've been doing fruit farming, and then getting into viticulture, into growing grapes, like I said, around 2008. And so Blue Sky is relatively new on the scene, but they're making some excellent quality fruit that, of course, they're growing right down in the bowl of Osoyoos, which means that they automatically have an advantage in being in this beautiful hot area. They work with Cab Sauv, they work with Syrah, which are both excellent grapes to do in that area as well. And they've been taking home medals pretty much since they've been producing wine. They've been pulling in double gold for their Cab Sauv, and so a good impressive start. And they're also they produce quite a few blends. They have 4 distinct blended wines that are various combinations of their Cab Franc, of their Cab Sauv. They do Viognier on site, which is another favorite of mine. So an excellent newer winery in the Osoyoos area. They are currently open. No reservation required. You can drop into their winery. They have everything all, of course, set up for COVID times. A couple of groups at a time, maximum 6 people per group. If you've done any wine touring, you're probably getting used to hearing this sort of thing. Maximum 6 people per group, only a couple groups inside at a time. But they're one of the wineries that you can actually just drop into instead of making a reservation beforehand. So there's a certain advantage to that right there. So this is, as I said before, Cab Franc from 2015, and because Cab Franc is a little bit later to begin and a little bit faster ripening, means that you can pack quite a bit in a short period of time. And when you have a really hot year like 2015, you actually have to be really careful not to bake your Cab Franc. A common concern from a number of winemakers that I've spoken to was in 2015 actually getting so hot that the Cab Franc vines went into shutdown. We always think that heat is universally good for grapes, and it's only true to a certain degree. It's only true to a certain point. You wind up getting overproductive vigor. You wind up getting grapes that ripen too fast and haven't developed the same amount of flavor as they would in a cooler year, and you wind up getting, as I said, almost comatose grapes that get so hot that they shut down entirely. But this right here, this has the spice that you would expect to see from Cab Franc, which kind of tells you right away on the nose that they haven't let this become baked by the sun. If this wine had been kind of overcooked from the 2015 season, it would smell jammy, right? It would be a lot of fruit there on the nose. It would be a lot of this sort of dark plum, but you wouldn't really get much floral aromatic. You wouldn't get a lot of spice. But this right here, you get pepper. This is always my favorite part of the thing where I smell wine and I talk about it, and you, I guess, watch it on your phone or your computer. I really hope that people are tasting along with me. So yeah, smells like pepper. You get this this capsicum tone. This is a frequent aspect that comes forward in Cab Franc. You see this big old word down here? I haven't explained this yet, have I? Methoxypyrazines. Yes, okay, I spelt it right. Methoxypyrazines, commonly just called pyrazines. Pyrazines are sometimes referred to as the green gene. They are basically a genetic marker that appears in the Carmenere Cabernet family, right? Sauv Blanc has it, Cab Franc has it, and they sort of pass it down to all their children. And the green gene, these methoxypyrazines, will give you an aspect of green herbality. You know how Sauvignon Blanc can smell like green grass. It can smell like fresh cut lawn. It can smell like cat urine on a gooseberry bush, right? This is all coming from methoxypyrazines. In Cab Franc, and then in Cab Sauv, in Merlot, in Carmenere, you wind up getting these elements that seem like green bell pepper, or if it's ripened well enough, more like red bell pepper. And this right here has this kind of roasted red pepper tone to it. Which again kind of reiterates right away that this was grown in beautiful hot conditions. Some people would say that dead air is bad, but that's a really important aspect right there. You gotta take your time while you're tasting. There's no use in rushing it. Always make sure that you smell, swirl, you smell, you swirl, you smell. Take in as much as you can right there. And then that first sip that you taste, pass it around in your mouth. Make sure it coats everything, gets on the roof of your mouth, on the front of your teeth, underneath your tongue, all that jazz. And really prime your mouth. right? I say this again and again and again. The first taste of wine is basically a primer coat. It never really tastes correct. It tastes formative. It sets the stage, and it gets you ready for the flavors of the second, of the third taste. And right away, you can tell some of the technical aspects, right? That we've got elements of acidity. You've got a little hint of acid right there that just kind of tickles at the back of your neck. Cab Franc is a lower acid, or sorry, it's a higher acid grape than your comparative Cab Sauves or Merlots. You have a nice crispness, a nice clean tone right there. But it also has structure and it has tannin. And so you wind up getting that grip in the cheeks. But this, having been aged for a few years in the bottle, right, the 2015 would have been quite aggressive when it was first bottled, but it's been given enough time, it's absorbed enough air, that now it's breaking down a little bit, and it's now tasting really soft. There's this really velvety tone that just sort of warms your cheeks. You get some beautiful berry tones there. On that second taste that really comes in, it's blackberry, it's blueberry, maybe a little bit of black currant. Currant is a wonderful fruit to compare wine to because currants naturally have a bit of spice to them. And so you get that kind of fruit spice, that berry spice. Almost a little bit figgy. There's almost a little sweet figginess to it, which is again a really nice balance to the rest of the fruit. Gives you something a little bit different, and that pepper just keeps on coming on the nose right there. It isn't ground black pepper the way that Syrah can be ground black pepper, but it also isn't raw green bell pepper in the way that an underripe Cab Sauv can have. Cab Sauv has sort of dangerous levels of methoxypyrazine being passed down from both of its parents, which means that if you can't ripen Cab Sauv enough, you get this green underripe hit. In Cab Franc, it wears it a lot better. So if you get the green pepper, it's usually quite pleasant. But in this, it's not green at all. Really nice wine. This is just. It's fantastic to see more and more Cab Francs coming out of BC. And so when you have a new winery that's coming in and they are growing Cab Franc and then they start to produce their own wine, it's always exciting. And then when that wine is good, it's even more exciting. These guys, Blue Sky, they also grow the Cab Franc that is sold to Township 7. So the Township 7 Cab Franc, if you're a fan of the Township 7 Cab Franc, it's coming from the same vineyard. It's the same grapes as are going into this. So if you're a fan of Township 7, you should give this a try as well. Comes in at $31 after tax. As far as Cab Francs go, you typically see them balancing around between $30 and $35. That's pretty common price for BC Cab Franc. So 31 is a good deal on that. Oh yeah, last thing that I want to note is that if you're interested in the wines of Blue Sky at this point, you're trying to look them up. Be aware that this is Blue Sky. It's Blue Sky Estate Winery, and that's a vital distinction because if you look up Blue Sky Vineyards, you find a wine producer in Illinois that also makes Cab Franc, but we don't need to talk about them. I also like their label. It's shiny and it has mountains on it. All right. And now, I'm supposed to empty this out so that I can get to the next wine. So just give me a minute. How's everybody doing tonight? Are we good? How's the video? Looks good to me. Actually, it doesn't look good to me. I'm just staring at a camera. I assume it's good. Producer Andrew, how's the video?
It's looking good.
It's looking good. Producer Andrew, if you want to taste these as well, you can get a glass and I'll I'll pour you some too. Or if you're working, I understand.
You gotta stay sharp for these.
Understood. Oh, my alarm's going off. If my wife is watching, you should feed our son a snack. This is my son's snack alarm. That's so that I remember to feed him. I literally set an alarm on my phone to remember to feed my son. Hey, working dad. Okay. Through whatever tools you need. Okay. Wine number 2. If Blue Sky is a newer winery on the scene, if maybe people are not quite so familiar with them yet, here is a winery that, if you know anything about British Columbia wine, you have probably heard of. This is from Burrowing Owl Estate Winery. Once again, you get the term estate winery. If you're unsure what that means, the idea behind an estate winery is simply that it is a winery that grows the predominance of their fruit on site. The estate, pardon me, the estate part of the estate winery, the estate is the property, is their home vineyard. And so the idea is that an estate winery is a winery that owns most of their own fruit. I say most because it's not uncommon for an estate winery to maybe buy a little bit of excess fruit from another producer. Usually if you're trying to go for estate, you try to stick close to home. You'll buy from a neighbor, you'll buy from somebody on the same road as you so that you maintain the consistency of your terroir. Burrowing Owl is a fantastic example of a self-made estate winery. They have over 220 acres. They are estate. They own all their own fruit, and it's not a small amount. They produce thousands and thousands of cases of wine off of 220 plus acres of fruit that is grown in 3 different areas. And they've been around. Well, let's just say they were some of the pioneers of Cab Franc in the valley. They were some of the first and some of the formative kind of exemplars, champions of Cab Franc, getting it forward as a single varietal wine. But in specific details, the growth of their vineyards started around 1993. It was a coordination between the founder, that was Jim and Midge Wise, and Jim was a property developer, I believe, and he came across a vineyard that he wanted to try to convert, and so he worked with the assistance of kind of the father of British Columbia modern vineyard growth, modern viticulture, a fellow named Richard Cleave, Dick Cleave, who most people in the wine industry know very well. Old Dick Cleave, who kind of taught us that you can grow good grapes, and so they started off with Burrowing Owl, Jim and Dick together, growing Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Merlot, and Cab Sauv. Those were the 4 initial wines that they planted. And then they quickly brought in Cab Franc in their second planting. So their Cab Franc is a few decades old, and it is some of the best known Cab Franc in the valley. If you're a fan of British Columbia Cab Franc, it's likely that you've tried the Burrowing Owl. They also have the distinction of being a real inspiration in terms of still being an independent family-owned winery, despite the size and scale that they have grown up to. It's uncommon to see, a few hundred acres of grapes and a winery of this stature being owned independently by the sole family that originally founded it. Jim Wise is still, of course, the founder, but the president now is his son Chris Wise, and the chief marketing executive is Carrie, who's their daughter. And so it's great to see a nice family winery that has grown to an international scale. When you go to buy their wine online, you have to click what country you're from to buy it, right? That alone tells you something about their reach, the degree to which they've stretched beyond just the Okanagan. Also, they're named after these cute little owls that burrow in the ground, and that's neat too. So this is their 2017 Cabernet Franc. And this is another fantastic example of Cab Franc that's showing off something entirely different, right? The 2015 was your bigger, denser, jammier, fruitier version of the wine. And the 2017 Burrowing Owl here, this is immediately, it's elegant on the nose, right? You get this floral tone that comes forward. Cab Franc tends to have these elements of sort of violets, of sort of brambleberry, sometimes of graphite or gravel, and this right here, this immediately gives you this floral tone, and it is mixed with a little bit of earthiness, which is just so satisfying to smell. Now, 2017, of course, much cooler season than 2015. There was nothing wrong with 2017. It was a little tiny bit maybe cooler than average, but 2015 was just so rip-roaring hot that everything seems cold in comparison. But specifically, the notes, the vineyard notes from the 2017 Burrowing Owl, little slower, cooler spring, just kind of getting things started, a little more sluggish than in previous years, but then big hot summer. So this is the sort of year that a lot of red wine grapes would not do well with, right? Slow build up, and then spontaneously quite a bit of heat right in the middle. But Cab Franc does brilliantly in situations like this. And this is a wine that has shown a certain amount of adaptation just in terms of the aromatics right away. You can tell, okay, this wine has fruit to it, but the fruit is not coming across overripe or dried. It is fresh, it is bright, and again you get this this beautiful sort of peppery tone coming in too. It's really nice. Burrowing Owl, very big into sort of environmental consciousness as well. Fantastic vineyard practices, incredibly environmentally conscientious vineyard practices. I've worked with a former vineyard manager of theirs who has spoken very highly about the way that they handled their vineyards. Lots of, very careful integrated pest management, basically near organic in terms of the way that they handle their vineyards. Not every vineyard certifies as organic, even if they basically fulfill all the qualifications to be organic. There's a lot to the concept of organics that you can go read up on that afterwards. I'm not going to get into it right now, but the fact is, effectively organic and very sustainable vineyard practices, but as well, solar panels everywhere, right? Solar heating all throughout their entire facility, and geothermal HVAC inside all of their guest suites. They have 10 rooms of accommodation right there at this gorgeous, picturesque, like palatial winery. They have the Sonora room, which is a world-class restaurant right there on site, and then they have their tasting facility. They've got a big tower you can climb up. If you haven't been to Burrowing Owl, you're missing out on one of the big sites, right? One of the sort of preeminent spectacles of wineries in the South Okanagan. And really good wine, really super good wine, with very tall bottles. This is this is just a real treat. You see, what I like about the 2017 here is that you're getting more overt acidity. And again, this happens all the time whenever I'm teaching classes. I go on and on about acidity, and I need to remind people that acid is not a bad thing. That acid is, in fact, a really positive thing. Acid is something that lends food and wine freshness and zest and zip. And when I'm tasting this right here, I'm seeing the presence of that Cab Franc acid that you wouldn't necessarily be getting in things like Cab Sauv or Merlot, and it gives it this vitality that also changes the way that the flavors taste. In the blue sky, right down from that hot bowl inside a Soyuz, getting tones like dark berry, blackberry, blueberry, black currant, Here, it's reminding me of red currant. It's reminding me of raspberry, of red cherry, and that is because of that hint of acid, right? You can take a single flavor, you add a drop of acid to it, and all of a sudden it changes your mind from thinking it's black currant to red currant. The red berries are the more acidic berries, and I have very, very fond associations of all of this red fruit, which I love so much. There's a herbality to it, which is a fun word to be able to say when you're talking about wine. Herbality. Try saying it. Herbality. See? It's fun. There's a herbal tone that's kind of like this is a little bit like sage or it's almost rosemary. It's not resinous like rosemary, but there's this floral aromatic tone that definitely reminds me of the more aromatic green herbs, and it's sort of this crushed, dry, aromatic tone inside there, in amongst the fruit, and this general warmth that's coming from the oak aging. They do 90% French oak barrels and 10% Hungarian oak. Hungarian oak is kind of like a halfway point between your bold, punchy American oak barrels and your soft, well-integrated, laid-back French oak. Hungarian's a little bit spicier, a little more intense than your French, but not quite to the degree of American. And they only do 20% oak barrels, which is a lot of wineries will go towards 30%, 35% sometimes when putting together their red wines. And so this is a little bit less new oak, which just means a little bit softer tones from the oak barrel, but you do get a little tiny bit of that dry cocoa, a little tiny bit of chocolate right there. Beautiful wine, amazing quality, coming in at $35, which again is a steal for this. I'm sure the bottle alone costs $3 wholesale. I mean, look at the intensity of that glass right there, and you can get them online. It's free shipping if you buy a case, or you can actually opt for doing $2 off a bottle if you order online. So you've got some fantastic discount ordering options. You can also visit Burrowing Owl in person if you have the luxury of coming out to the Okanagan. This is a great time to come visit. I should say this: September, beginning of October, really good time to visit the Okanagan. Usually the weather's great. I mean, today was choking smoke from Washington. It's not going to be like that every day, I promise. And this is a nice time because, usually people are going back to school, kids are going back to school, things are just a little bit quieter in the tasting rooms. It's been, shockingly, despite the fact that we've been in the middle of a global pandemic, it's been incredibly busy at all of the wineries this summer, all through the Okanagan, absolutely packed from a lot of internal, inter-provincial travel. And so that kind of calms down a little bit in September and certainly early October. So those are really good times to come and visit. And if you have the opportunity to come visit the Okanagan, make sure that you hit up Burrowing Owl. They do recommend reservations. They'll take a walk in, but if they're busy, you'll have to wait. So it's always best to make a reservation. And if you're going to Burrowing Owl for the wine, you may as well go to the Sonora Room, the restaurant there, for a meal as well. And they have a beautiful list of all the Burrowing Owl wines, but also some back vintages. You can get some really exciting stuff in the restaurant that you can't necessarily buy at the tasting bar. So it's fun. You can do a bit of a wine tasting, and then you can go continue that wine tasting with some new things at the restaurant. And they're seating half capacity right now, like most or all restaurants, but still plenty of room. And again, definitely reservations recommended there too. So thank you very much, Burrowing Owl, for making a wine that I am able to drink on camera tonight. This is a weird job that I have.
Try not.
I don't know. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one final wine to talk about today. And this is one that is near and dear to my heart. This is the 2018 Cabernet Franc from Riverstone Estate Winery. Look at that, 3 wineries, every single one of them estate. That's always kind of fun to see. I guess it's worth noting that the estate term is not actually regulated in any way, so they could all be lying and buying all of their fruit and still put it on there. But I know that they're not, because they're all very nice people. But that is a thing. You can say that anything's estate, but generally they don't. I feel like I'm backing myself into a corner here where I'm slandering the wineries, but I'm not. They're all very honest. But if they wanted to be dishonest, they could put the name on there and then not use it. What was I saying? Oh yes, right, of course. Riverstone 2018 Cabernet Franc. I'm excited about this one because I haven't actually tried the 2018 yet. I'm very familiar with the previous vintages that they've produced because Riverstone is one of my favorite wineries in all of British Columbia. They are some of my favorites because they make absolutely stellar, consistently high quality wine year after year, but also because they're very pleasant people. Riverstone is owned by Ted and Lorraine Kane, and they are just the most pleasant and genuine people that you'll ever meet. Ted is probably one of my favorite winemakers in the Okanagan because he's just a big self-professed nerd when it comes to wine. You ask him questions and he gives you answers. There's no fluff to it. He will get into the fine granular details about plant biology or about the chemistry of selecting a specific type of yeast or what temperature you need to ferment at to achieve certain effects. He knows his stuff. He's a very knowledgeable guy, and he got a bit of an unlikely start at winemaking, living out in Edmonton. And starting to make wine basically just in his house, in his basement, with whatever fruit he could get his hands on. And then eventually he started driving his little hatchback car across the Rockies out to BC, buying British Columbia grapes at harvest, loading up the back of his car, driving them back over the Rockies and getting them all the way back out to Edmonton to make wine out there, until eventually I think his wife told him that this was stupid and they should probably just move to the Okanagan. But they got Riverstone started. I always have to check my dates right here. They started planting in 2003. And at that time they put in Merlot, Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, and Malbec. And eventually they put in a little bit of Petit Verdot as well, which are, of course, the 5 major grapes from the Bordeaux region of France, because Ted recognized that there was a similarity, that there was something to the area in the Okanagan that he selected for his little property, which is it's about 9 acres, the property, about 7.5 of it is planted with grapes. And so it's just a small little parcel, but he saw that there was a similarity there to the right bank of Bordeaux and the sorts of wines that can be produced there. Although since then he's actually talked about how the wines that he makes are not necessarily old world wines. He wants them to be a little bit juicier, a little bit jammier, a little fruitier, and not to have the astringency that you can get with some of those old world varietals. So an excellent job of respecting and recognizing the qualities and lessons from old world winemaking while applying some of the innovation and creativity of new world winemaking. That's the whole fundament of new world winemaking, is trying things that are a little bit different, is kind of exploring different possibilities. And it's great to see these wineries that are able to strike a balance, without completely shaking off any vestiges of the old world and kind of going crazy, still maintaining some recognition of that while experimenting and trying new things. I want to point out quickly that all 3 of these wineries that I've talked about, the similarities, right? They're all estate wineries. They're all obviously producing Cab Franc, but all of them also make blend wines with their Cab Franc. And all three of them are probably pretty well known for their blends. The Riverstone blends using the Cab Franc are absolutely monumental wines. They're absolutely incredible, and again they all make multiple blends, multiple iterations. There's a couple different wines that Ted produces that are blends of the different reds that show off what most people know Cab Franc for. Right? We haven't even really pinned down the idea that Cab Franc, I said at the beginning, it was maybe underutilized or underrecognized, and yet it is almost everywhere, but it's almost everywhere in a blend, right? We're talking here about the grapes that Ted planted in 2003 and about the traditional Bordeaux style blend. A Bordeaux blend is Merlot, Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And it's almost always dominated by either Merlot or Cab Sauv, depending on what side of Bordeaux you're on. But Cab Franc is always kind of third down the tier, followed by Malbec and Petit Verdot. Because Malbec and Petit Verdot, they're big, they've got a lot of tannin, they've got a lot of intensity. We are going to do an entire Meritage Vinstitute class, I think 2 sessions from now, 4 weeks from now. So I'm not gonna spoil everything that I was gonna say, but Cab Franc for most people is a component that goes into a blend. It is somewhat lighter, and it's used to kind of spruce up the aromatics and add a little bit of zest to these other heavier, denser grapes. But I have great respect for any winery that uses their Cab Franc in a blend to kind of capture those elements that make it so well suited to combining with other grapes, but then also produce it on its own. Because I think that it is just such a lovely grape on its own. It's wasted if it's purely hidden inside a blend. Okay, so this right here, I'm getting licorice right away. This is giving me just a fantastic sort of fennel or aniseed, sort of almost savory licorice tone, which is well, it's one of my favorite things to smell in wine. There's again a little bit of spice, there's a little bit of florality, but the licorice is really nice. It's a little bit dark cherry. This is from 2018, so we are progressively getting younger and younger right here. And in 2018, it was a different year than 2017. 17 started out cool and then it got hot. 2018. Bam, hit hot very early on, which caused trouble for a lot of wineries because it caused all the snow on the mountains to spontaneously melt all at once and then flood. And a lot of wineries had terrible, terrible flooding in that year. The winery that I was working at, horrible flooding, or really, really brutal flooding. And that meant mildew propagation and all kinds of nasty problems. But Ted chose a beautiful little spot in northeast Oliver, where he's up on a little hill and he's kind of away from immediate threat of waterways, and so they were able to dodge any aspect of the flooding. So they got a nice hot spring that then cooled down in the summer, but basically remained consistent and level. The 2018 wines, if you can find them from areas that didn't suffer from these, acts of God, then they're actually very nice, very well balanced wines. It wasn't a cold year, but it also wasn't a blazing hot year, so you get this nice mid-ground, which kind of helps the aromatics of this wine. Producer Andrew, what time is it?
It is 7:53.
Great, right on schedule. Things do tend to go faster when I don't need to be messing around with my own cameras and microphones for 15 minutes at the beginning of every stream.
Lorraine Kane says hi and that she misses you.
Oh, hey Lorraine, I miss you too.
And Marissa Cuglietta says it looks amazing.
Well, thank you, Marissa. It does look amazing. This is so good. This is just such a wonderful wine. Again, it's appealing to some of the same sensibilities that I really enjoyed about the 2017 Bourgogne, which is that you get these elements of red fruit, right? You get this hint of cranberry, right? This slight touch of tartness that then also has enough balance from the tannin to keep it from being lean, right? This is not a light wine. Certainly, if you are a Cab Sauv drinker, or if you like, beefy Merlots, this would seem lighter, but that's what Cab Franc is about. It is a more delicate, it is a more elegant wine. And I think that this is a good lineup to show you the different ways that it can come through. That in a hot year, in a hot area, 2015, down in a Soyuz blue sky, you can get something that's jammy and full and bold, but it never really loses that hint of that slightly delicate nature. And then you move into Berwingel. I didn't even talk about Berwingel's growing conditions. I said that they have hundreds of acres, but they are kind of the exemplars of the Black Sage Bench. The Black Sage Bench is, of course, the eastern section of the highway stretching between Oliver and Osoyoos, and you have sand, just deep sand, right? Meters upon meters of sand, and that means fantastic water drainage, and so you don't get oversaturated vines that are growing rapidly because they're kind of getting too much liquid. Instead, you get slightly dried out vines that have to struggle and fight to get their moisture, and that usually winds up getting you more concentrated fruit, smaller berries on every cluster that have a little bit more intensity to them. And Riverstone right here, this Cab Franc, this is grown on a south-facing part of the vineyard that's kind of capturing all this beautiful equatorial heat shining up at us, and is composed of sand, but also gravel and river stones, right? Hence the name of the winery. Beautiful site with sort of unique terrain, unique terroir that it's upon, and I mean, it produces just a fantastic wine. There's not really too much more to say other than that. Another great price on this, $32, and $32 for a bottle of this, which is an absolute steal. This is a wine that could easily be $39 and live up to that price. And what's more, we have a bit of a special deal for everybody who's watching this. If you want to get free shipping on any case of 6 or more bottles, it can be the Cab Franc, or it can be any other wines that you like from Riverstone. And I certainly recommend that you go onto their website and you pick up a couple bottles of Cab Franc, but then also grab some of the other items too. I mean, everything that they produce is of magnificent quality. You can pretty much just spin a roulette wheel and you'll find something good. But if you use the coupon code UNCORK, if you use the coupon code UNCORK, not UNCORK Blanc, let me get rid of that. If you use the coupon code if you use the coupon code UNCORK, I chose the coupon code, so I did this to myself, then you'll get free shipping. And that coupon code is applicable all the way until the end of September. You heard me say it, I don't need to write it on the whiteboard, but I don't know. Sometimes I just like to show off that I can write sideways on a whiteboard with some level of competency. Well, thank you everybody for watching with us tonight. I think this is my tightest session yet. I think I've actually managed to nail the 1 hour mark instead of seeping over to 75 minutes, which is what I usually do. And I credit that to the fact that I wasn't staring at a picture of my own face the entire time and getting distracted by that. Thank you everybody for watching, and I hope that everybody had an opportunity to pick up some of these wines in advance so that you were able to taste along with me. But if you did not, like I said, there's still plenty of opportunities to get your hands on them. Blue Sky, you can visit their website to order their wine. Burrowing Owl, again, you have to select what country you live in, which means that I guess if you're watching this from outside of Canada, you can probably get the wine out there too. There's like 7 countries listed on their website. I don't even understand how they do that. And as for Riverstone, if you go onto their website and you use the coupon code UNCORK, you will receive free shipping on whatever your order may be, as long as it is 6 bottles or more. And again, I recommend picking up some Cab Franc and a few other things too. It's actually extremely rare that they have Cab Franc at this time of year, and so you have to kind of snatch it up right now before it is entirely gone. If you have not been listening to the podcast that we've been doing, I have an episode of that coming out this Friday that I guess I need to record. I suppose that'll be my tomorrow. And that's called Uncork the Sun with the Vinstitute Wine School. We talk to winemakers, we do little interviews, and we chat about the generalities of wine. For my episode that's going to be coming out Friday, I'm going to be talking about food and wine pairings, which is something that people always get excited about. I'm going to talk a bit about the Half Cork Marathon and about food and wine pairings. Usually I just leave that alone when I'm doing live classes in person, because I don't want to have to curate food for everybody. But now that you're all at home and I'm over here, I can tell you whatever I want about pairing food and wine, and you're the one that has to go out and buy all the steak tartare and whatnot. If anybody has any questions about any of the wines that we talked about today, or about anything in general, please feel free to email me. You can reach me at moss@vinstitute.ca. And you can find all the previous videos in this series, all of them looking much worse than this, in which we have absolutely stellar video. Thank you again, producer Andrew. You can find all those videos on the Oliver Soyuz Wine Country Facebook page, where you can also find links to our podcast and all of our other projects. All right, everybody. I think there is nothing more to say other than cheers. Andrew, I'm going to go smash your camera with this cup right here. You cool with that?
You do it. You do it.
All right. Okay. There. If you haven't ended the stream, you can do that now. Okay. All right.